Welcome to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle King, and the goal of this podcast is simple, just like the intro says. We're here to create an ecosystem in an environment where people thrive. And today's conversation is with an amazing woman. Her name is Rachel Simon, and she is literally setting the foundation for how people thrive. She's a motivated professional in the advancement and philanthropic space with 12 years of experience in frontline fundraising, spanning from major giving, annual giving, planned giving, prospect research, and database management. She's just the jack of all trades. She just does it well, and she does it successfully. So, Rachel, how you doing? It's good to see you.
Hi, Kyle. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I am super happy as well. Your experience, your resume and your story is just absolutely amazing. But before we get into the episode and you talking about all things fundraising, can you just introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what led you to this work?
Absolutely. I always like to start off by sharing a little bit about how I got started in fundraising.
Of
Like
course.
many of us, it wasn't my plan to work in this field, but I was a student in undergrad and I had a work study package as part of my financial aid, and I ended up at the university's phonathon program.
Wow.
And yeah, I enjoyed it. I really loved talking to our alumni, parents, and
Mhm.
friends. And when I graduated, a mentor of mine said, this could be a career for you.
Exactly.
At the time, I thought, let me see. I was very cautious. And then I joined a company that had me consulting at 14 universities across the country and just kind of found something I love.
Wow. What do you think makes a great fundraiser? Because I hear a lot of times when I talk to people, especially in this space, in this field, and similar when in educational fields as well, that I found something that I love. You don't hear that a lot. Is that part of or one of the characteristics you think of fundraisers in this space?
I think it's helpful, and I want to be careful not to say I don't work in the industry that I'm passionate for, because I think
Mhm.
that passion projects should be separate from work.
That's good.
That's to protect our time and energy. But I care about this work because of the impact that I make. And I think that impact is something that many of us fundraisers can relate to. That's why we do what we do, why we give where we give, and also how we can relate to the folks interested in making an impact in our organization.
How do you approach your work? I know that currently you're in the development space at FSU. How do you approach the work on a day-to-day basis?
That's right. I am relatively new in my current position. I have a responsibility to raise money for the College of Business at FSU and build a fairly new portfolio. I'm
Hmm.
also managing a couple of folks. So a good chunk of my time is prospecting. And then I've got, right, the portfolio management that is familiar to many of us who have ongoing relationships with folks that could be alumni. And I always like to include friends for folks that work at other nonprofits that aren't alumni based. And then a good part of my job is also training and mentoring our new hires. I learn best by doing, and that's how I've learned everything I know today is accompanying others. And so I really try to be a great mentor and take partners along with me on my meetings as well.
When you think about building that list, because that is one of the conversations that we talk about always on the Contagious Culture
Mhm.
podcast, and as well as there's a lot of grassroots organizations or just people that want to fundraise more that always ask the question, Kyle, how do I go about building this list? I have no idea where to go, how to do it. What would be your recommendations, or even just how do you go about building a new prospect list?
Yeah, I think there are a few ideas for some of us. I'm very fortunate where I am now at FSU that we
Mhm.
have a database of folks with affinity. I also can relate to some folks who work at smaller nonprofits because I worked at a couple of those where we didn't have huge databases with
Exactly.
hundreds of thousands of folks to meet with. I would say start with your circles of affinity. So think of your board members. Who on your board is a connector? Who can introduce you to people in the community that might have an interest in the work that you're doing? Perhaps your executive director or other members of the volunteer community of your organization can be connectors in that way as well. And I would also say anybody who's volunteering for your organization is a great prospect for giving. And they may not be a major gift prospect right away, but I've had a lot of success talking to folks who are volunteers about making recurring gifts and also planned gifts, because those people really get the work and they get the mission. They wouldn't be spending their time if they weren't invested in the organization.
That's good. Let me ask you this, because interestingly, I'm going to be fully transparent, Rachel. I had a conversation with Rochelle Petaway from Freedom School Partners. It's an organization that's based here in Charlotte, North Carolina. She was one of our guests on the Contagious Culture podcast, and asked her a similar question about how do you go about building a list? And she gave various strategies, but then also one of the things that she noted was volunteers. And at that time, it's the first time that I've even thought through about asking volunteers. And can you talk more about why the volunteer base is such a powerful and potentially influential market when we're building lists?
Absolutely. And to do that, I'm going to back up just a moment and talk back about that circles of influence that I mentioned, or affinity. If you can think of a bullseye with the circles that get larger and larger, at the center of your bullseye are the folks that are most affiliated or have the most affinity for your organizations. These could be folks like leadership of your organization, like the folks that are already giving in a major way. They're also the volunteers who do the work, right? We're talking about people who invest their time, talent, teamwork, and then treasure is the component that we specialize in. But thinking who's at that center of that circle of affinity. And then when you think about who's the next level out, that next ring in that circle, that's going to be the folks who your people can make introductions to. So I always ask my board members when I'm on a meeting, who can you refer me to? Who's in your circle of influence that you can make a connection? Who might be interested to learn more about our work? And we do want to make sure those board members understand we're not asking their contacts straight up for hard cash gift right away. We're asking for the mission and the value of the organization.
Rachel, that is so good. And I have literally, as you see, I wrote this little target over here on my side. And so I want to back up, because I want to really be able to give this the time and the value that it deserves. For anyone that's never even thought through this concept of this infinity circle, how do we choose the people that are in the middle, though? Like, because what you said is it kind of builds out and builds out and builds out. And I'm guessing the people on the further out rim are the people that we're furthest away from. Yes. But people in the middle are the people that we're closest to. How do we identify those people that would be best in order to reach out to?
Well, I think about that is a great question. Thank you, Kyle. I think about those circles in terms of four things: time, talent, treasure, and teamwork. And as fundraisers, we specialize in the treasure part of that four T's, right? However, folks don't think in isolated circles or in isolated boxes about how they invest and how they give of their wealth, their time, their talent. So when you see somebody who's giving in their time or their talent, when you see someone who's a board member, that's teamwork, right? That means they're investing in that organization. So we already know a lot of the people who are at the center of our circles of influence. And it's just a matter of sitting down and having a conversation with those people to learn more about them, and then ask them the question, are you interested in learning more about how you can invest in this organization? Or, to put it another way, how you might also share your treasure with this organization? Because I like to thank them if they're already giving of their talent, if they're already giving of their teamwork, if they're already giving of their time, they are invested in the organization.
That is so good. And you just gave me another T. I've always said the time, talent, and treasure. I've never heard the teamwork one. And I think that's important because even in teamwork, like your board, who are the people that you're working with, and then who are those people connected with as well, and all of those could be able to ultimately benefit the organization.
Absolutely.
My question for you, as you're building this list, and then we've identified this list of individuals, how do you go about having these conversations? Could you walk me through a potential or a mock conversation that you would have with the potential donor with one of the campaigns I'm sure that you all are running?
Yeah, a list or a rating limit you. I'm given lists all the time and their ratings, and the rating might be this person is million bazillionaire or this person doesn't have a lot of money. The truth is, I call on as many people as I can and schedule as many meetings because ratings are only a starting point.
That's
I
good.
believe that we have to talk to folks, right, to really get to know them, what they care about, and if they have the time, talent, treasure, and teamwork to invest in our organization. So when I meet with somebody, I think about asking questions in these categories. The first one is their affinity to the organization. So tell me about your experience, in my case, with FSU. What were some of your most memorable experiences there? Who was a mentor that you spent a lot of time with? How did that get you to where you are today? Those kinds of probing questions help me learn a lot about that person and also why they might care about our organization. Also, asking about their family, interests, and hobbies. This tells me both about their interests, right? But also about their capacity. If I talk to somebody who says, I go on my, 50-foot yacht every other weekend, that's a capacity indicator. If I'm paying for 3 kids in school, that's a capacity indicator. So all of these questions lead to two things, and that's working on understanding affinity and capacity of these individuals. Then we want to ask about their other organizations that they share their 4Ts with. If they have other passions, if they give to other organizations in any of the 4Ts, that's really meaningful. That tells us they're philanthropic. And that also tells us what areas of interest that they have. So that can direct us. And then, of course, we want to make sure to ask them, how do they prefer to be communicated with? Who else needs to be a part of the conversation? We don't want to get too far down the road when we're talking to someone and then we ask them for a gift and they turn around and say, well, I would love to, but I don't control our finances. You need to be talking to my partner over there.
That's
We want
good.
to make sure, yeah, we're giving them the opportunity to lead the conversation. And then the most important question you can ask, and this is in that qualification or that first meeting, make sure you ask them explicitly, are you interested in exploring the possibility about investing your treasure in this organization? If we don't ask, we can't know. Just because they have affinity, just because they have capacity, doesn't mean that they want to invest in our organization. We have to ask and be open to a yes or a no.
That is like a masterclass on how you navigate some of these conversations. And I appreciate you so much. When this happens, when you're building a relationship, oftentimes we talk about the good parts and you've built this great relationship. There's so much alignment and you close them and then everybody's happy. What happens though when there isn't alignment and this person doesn't want to give or this person is very distant? How do you identify these various characteristics so that you know where to best place your time, your energy, and your resources as well?
Yeah, I think that's a struggling concept for the new folks that I'm training up is I just got somebody who's disqualified. They have all the capacity out the wazoo, but they're just not interested. They told me, no, I don't want to learn more. That's okay.
Okay.
That is okay. And here's why. One, because by listening to that person, we've shown them we care and respect whatever opinion that they have. And if there's something that perhaps isn't in our area, but our organization serves in another way, we can connect them to that area that they may have more affinity for. If they have no interest, and there are some people who just aren't philanthropic, that's okay too. Not everybody has to make a gift to our organization. And as you said, Kyle, when we learn this about them, that frees up our time. So I would say it's just as good to disqualify somebody as it is to qualify them, because now we know. When I call through my identification list, I don't know a thing about these people except what the computer spits out at me. After a conversation with that individual, I'm able to see affinity, capacity, and do they want to continue a relationship that leads to an investment in this.
I guess my question though, Rachel, when that happens, how do you have that conversation with that individual? Like, if you recognize that there's either a disconnect in the affinity or the capacity or their willingness to even give to the organization, is there a conversation that takes place with that individual, or do you just divert your time into other resources and people?
So generally, when I ask the question in this first meeting, and that's what I've been referring to as the qualification meeting, is typically the first time I'm meeting with an individual. I'm aiming to walk away knowing three things. Do they have affinity for the organization? Do they have capacity to give? And do they want to give? Would they be open to philanthropy at this organization? And in order to move them forward to the next step in the donor life cycle, which is cultivation, I need to have the answer to those three questions. And that means explicitly asking and being very careful not to make any assumptions for that individual. So I've made this mistake before. And I love my folks who, love FSU, wear garnet and gold to everything. And we have such a great time at parties, only to learn that they have no interest or no capacity to give. And there's a place for those people. We love those people. Absolutely, they can be volunteers. Absolutely, they can be connectors in the community for FSU. But my focus and my job is tasked with raising resources in terms of treasure for the university when we think about the 4Ts. Mm-hmm. So when somebody says to me, no, I'm not really interested in that component, my job is to connect them to someone else who is tasked with that, position, if it's volunteering, engagement, or if it's nothing at all, and letting them know, here's the introduction, and this person is specialized in of the 4Ts.
Interesting. That's such an interesting concept, because then that even continues to build upon the importance of collaboration and cross collaboration amongst teams. Let me ask you this. Let me throw another wrench into it. Mm-hmm. I'm a new nonprofit. I just started today, first day. I just got my 501c3 paperwork. It's me, and it's my mom and dad are board members. How would you coach that individual to go out there and build something and build this list if they don't necessarily have an organization backing them or alumni backing them? How would you recommend them go out there and do it?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked at a small nonprofit where I was the first ever development officer. So It wasn't quite as small as what you described, but I can certainly relate.
Of course.
And one of my experiences was sitting down to really understand the best value of my time. What does the organization need from me? And so my job, as I understand it, is to build relationships that advance and elevate the mission of the organization through resources. That's my job. And I have to be very protective of my time. If the task doesn't fall within that mission, I do not prioritize that. It may be a wonderful opportunity, but as fundraisers, we have to be very focused on our work. And if we're at a small organization and we don't have other employees to carry out the mission, we can use our community. And I talk about community all the time, whether that's coworkers or volunteers or like-minded folks who believe in the work that we're doing, finding those individuals that can support us, that Maybe your mom and dad on the board might be able to help with some of these things. Maybe it's somebody we haven't formed a board yet, but somebody who has influence in the community and might be an excellent board member and wants to volunteer their time. There are a lot of ways we can be creative because we need to remember to protect our time for the work of the mission.
That's good. That's so good. Rachel, you are leading this work. And I can tell in your responses, I can tell in how you grow, even your other team members as well. What did it take for you to not just have the learning curve and coming into the work, but having the capacity and the ability to be able to lead people in this work and be able to have all of these thoughts that you're giving us today?
That is a big question. I have to admit, I'm still learning and still growing. So there's never going to be a point where I hit the end and say, yep, I got it. Now I know exactly what to do. For me, I feel that we always have to be learning along the way. And I mentioned before, I learn by doing. So recognizing that and finding mentors and other fundraisers who will allow me to join them in their meetings and really partnering with other folks, I believe has helped me quite a bit. In terms of leading, I try to use my superpower, and we all have a superpower. I wonder what yours would be, and think about what is your superpower? Mine is structure and process. So I am a very structure oriented person, which works well for me, and has also translated to repeatable processes that I can share with other members of the team and other members of the fundraising community so they can follow what they wish and then make it their own. And that's allowed me to really be successful for my own work and onboard some of our new team members as well. In particular, I did a segment for CASE on identification and qualification. So if you're interested, I believe it's posted on the CASE platform, a PowerPoint called Identification to Qualification Best Practices, and you can learn a little bit more about that structure there.
Well, can we hear some of that structure today
Sure.
on the podcast? I'd love to hear it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is all going back to what we talked about before, which was how do we pull the list? And then the bigger question of once we get the list, what do we do with it?
Exactly.
Now, I learned a really cool statistic from Evertrue, which is on average, it takes about 6.6 attempts to get somebody to answer your messages. 6.6. Yeah. If we only call someone once, we only send one email, the likelihood of us connecting is actually very low. So we have to be persistent. I've created what I call a workflow, which is a series of 7 attempts timed over the course of a month to reach out to folks on different platforms, which allows them to respond in the way that's most convenient for them. So email, phone calls, text messages, LinkedIn, contact through the mail. I personally am not a big mail person, but I will say a lot of people love receiving a postcard or a letter in the mail, and they'll tell me, I received this in the mail and I was so excited it wasn't a bill because all I get are bills in the mail.
I hear you on that one, Rachel.
Yeah, but creating a workflow that works for you, finite time. So for me, it's a month, 7 touch points in 1 month, and working through it on scale. So my scale, I start on Monday morning, 40 people every week. And then throughout the next month, I'm contacting those 40 people. And every Monday, I've got 40 more.
What do you mean about those 40 people? Like, break it down for those of us who have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I take my identification list and say it's 300 people or whatever. I'll break it down into 40 at a time so it's not overwhelming for me. And I'll start every Monday morning. My workflow starts with an email. And in that email, I explain who I am and what I do for the organization. It's really important that we're upfront with them, that we are working on the treasure component of the 4 T's. That is our specialty. We want to make sure they know why they're accepting a meeting with us. And I also reference, if I don't hear from you, I'm going to give you a phone call later in the week. So that way they can expect to hear from me again. And the thing with that is if you say you're going to do it, you actually have to follow through and make that phone call when you say you will. That builds trust. So it's really quite important.
Okay.
After the phone call, I also follow up with a text message so that folks who prefer to respond by text have the opportunity to do so.
How far after the phone call?
Actually, I've played around with that. It used to be a few days. I follow up immediately now, and I let them know in the phone message. Often it's voicemail. I'm going to follow up by text so that way you can prefer if you would like to call me back or if you'd rather give me a text message, whatever is easier for you. And I get a surprising number of text messages back. It's well worth it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and then usually after that, I'll send a letter home. So snail mail for those of you who would be interested to do that. I highly recommend it. I usually either print a note and sign it with a pen, or I'll handwrite the note myself if I have the time, and I send those out. Generally, with the letter, I'll send a one-page kind of note fact sheet about the organization, or if we don't have that, a little link. I've even printed business cards with a link to our website with a little facts information sheet just to get them some information, get them excited about what's going, you know.
Of course.
Um, Give it a week because sometimes snail mail takes a long time to get
Okay.
to say, hey, did you see the letter I sent? I'm so excited to talk to you about all the things that I've shared with you in this letter. Okay. And then after that, I usually do another phone call and then I follow up with the final email, which I like to call the bless and release email, which says something to the effect of, we haven't had a chance to connect. I know I've reached out a lot, so I'm going to stop trying for a while, but I'm here if and when the time is right.
Rachel, this could have been enough for me. This is so good. There's, I talk to a lot of people and I love so much when I'm just so blown away from like my notes over. I had to get a bigger notebook to be able to write notes down. And I love the bless and release message. From the bless and release message, that last follow up, because I think,
Mm.
oftentimes we're not going to see from a conversion standpoint, a lot of people just, an influx of just giving and giving and giving back to us. From that bless and release email, what is the response that you usually get?
So, a surprising number of people contact you. I just have been so busy with work, or I've got life going on. Let me plan a meeting, but just not right now. And
That's
then I
good.
do, yeah, and I do get a lot of no response as well. But what I do with the folks that don't respond is I try again in 6 or 10 months because a different time of the year might be a better time for those individuals. So until they tell me no, and right, if they do say no, I'm not interested, we have to respect that. But they might not have even seen any of these outreach. So I definitely will give it some space and some time and then try again in 6 to 10 months.
That's good. Have you ever had someone that you've lost touch with? I hear this all the time in regards to, you had a great cadence with them. They were even interested in giving, and then they just either ghosted you or stopped responding. Like, how do you deal with cases like that? Do you continue to follow up? Like, what are best practices in the industry that you've seen?
Yeah, certainly. I think we all have something like that. My first instinct would be to think about that individual and not necessarily as a general case, but
Of
think about
course.
how does that individual prefer to be communicated with? And remember, that's something we should be asking them in the first meeting. How do they prefer to be communicated with? I would reach out to them in that method of communication and simply say, this has been my understanding. I thought that you were excited about this opportunity, and I want to make sure we're still on the same page. If not, that's okay. Does
Mm,
this sound right to you? Is there anything that I missed? If
that's good.
now's not a good time, that's all right. We're going to be here whenever it is a good time.
Of
If we
course.
were on the wrong path, if this is no longer something that you're interested in, I understand life changes and we all have surprises.
Yeah.
We really appreciate anything and everything that you're able to do for this organization. And when the time is right, we'll be here.
That's
So
so
I think,
kind.
yeah, well, we do. We want to lead with gratitude because these are people that are sharing their time, their talent, their treasure, and their teamwork with our organization. Leading with gratitude is so important.
That's good. What are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make, Rachel? Whether it's in the fundraising, whether it's in the the identification phase, or even the creating awareness phase. What in any of the many phases, what are some of the mistakes that fundraisers make, and then how can we avoid those?
That's an interesting question to me because I think there are so many that we just learn. I learned by trial and error.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
it may be a mistake. It's not a failure. I don't think we
That's good.
have failures. I think that I've been trying to learn to really listen more than I speak. The best thing that we can do as fundraisers is be listening. I've heard a lot of people talk about being curious or the curious chameleon. That's another way to be an active listener is by asking open-ended questions. So by allowing the donor, the prospect to take the lead, that will help us listen better and avoid some of those mistakes. Tell me, how do you like to be communicated with? Who else do you want in this conversation? What is the impact that you hope to make at this organization? Allowing them to guide and to tell us what they. I certainly have my fair share of mistakes, and I do think that learning from them and calling them out. Here's an example, if you will indulge me.
Of course.
I recently met with a very generous fellow who, this was a qualification meeting. We had never met before. He wasn't really highly rated, but announced that he had a very large planned gift for the organization. And I walked away thinking, wow, what an exciting thing. That went great. He had
Mhm.
even agreed to document that gift with us. So my next step, as I understood it, and I believe we confirmed that in the meeting, although I think perhaps this is where we weren't on the same page. I walked away, drafted the gift agreement, and sent it for him to review. All I
Mm.
heard was crickets back. And so a few weeks later, I reach out very casually, hey, I don't know if you've had a chance to review the agreement, but whenever you're ready, I'd really like to hear what your thoughts are. And I got a message back that simply said, I don't feel comfortable documenting this. What if
Wow,
something changes? I don't know what the landscape looks like in the next 10 years for the economy.
that's
And
good.
yeah, I think that's a really valid and fair point. Part of it was just being honest and saying, I hear you, right? We understand. And then asking for permission. Can we talk for just a few more minutes? I didn't mean to get ahead of where you were. The reason why we ask for permission is to get the buy in from the donor. And then on the phone, we were able to talk and say, the reason why I asked you to document was not to lock you into anything. Our planned gift agreements are non binding.
That's
The
good.
only reason to do that was to understand the intention of your giving, to ensure that we carry out your intention, to make the impact that you want.
That's good.
And the truth, I don't know if this gift is going to close or not, but it's listening to the donor, letting them lead. And then if we get ahead of ourselves, like I did in this case, calling it out and saying, I hear you. Maybe I was a little ahead of myself. I got excited about this gift. It is exciting. Can we, asking permission, can we have a few more minutes of conversation to see if we might get on the same page?
Exactly. Let me ask you this, Rachel. Walk me through or back. Tell me about your first gift. Like, how did that make you feel? I remember mine. It was like I was kind of, I didn't know if it was real, like if this is actually happening or not, but it was so exciting. Walk me through your first gift, whether even at FSU or any organization that you've been at.
Yeah, I think maybe this wasn't my very first gift, but the one that stands out to me in my mind
Yeah.
the most. I love just thinking about this gift. It warms my heart. I met with a guy who was a faculty member at a smaller 2-year arm of a large university.
Hmm.
So The 2-year arm of this large university was kind of new, it was recently acquired, and it wasn't receiving a lot of love or funding from the larger entity. So there was a lot of frustration. And I had a faculty member who came to me with some of that frustration, and we were able to say, I hear you. What is the impact that you want to see? And we always try to bring it back to impact and to students
Exactly.
and help him be a part of that solution. You want to see this? Let's make it happen together. Let's talk about how we can make it happen. And y'all might know faculty members don't get paid a whole lot of money, but we were able to talk with this gentleman about the impact. What he wanted to do was create a scholarship to help students who were not the A+ student, but maybe someone who was a B or C student who needed a kick in the butt just to get over the finish line and graduate. Because he was a C+ student. His mother gave him that kick in the butt that he needed, and now he wants to help others. And the cool thing about that gift was he didn't have the cash to create an endowment at the level that it needed to be. So he used a planned gift vehicle to create the endowment and then started giving cash on an annual basis so he could see the benefits of that gift right away. And we were able to award the first scholarship. And we had a scholarship luncheon in the spring. I think it was about April. And we placed him at a table with his student, the scholarship recipient. They had such a great conversation. He came to me at the end of that event in tears and said, what do I need to do to get more students just like that next year?
Wow. That's powerful, Rachel. How did that make you feel?
It was a really moving event, to be honest with you. The reason I remember that particular gift so much isn't because it was the largest, but it allowed me to see the work that I do and to be a partner to these individuals is meaningful. And to see the joy on the donor's face and to hear the benefit the student received from that scholarship, that's what inspires me.
Exactly. Let me ask you this question. What is something that you wish you were able to share more that no one really asked you?
Well, there are a lot of things that come to mind, but one of them is something I wish I knew when I started out as a very young. And now we've got the Lilly School of Philanthropy in Indiana giving out degrees in fundraising. And until about 3 years ago, that was not the case. There was no school where you could go to get a degree in fundraising. So all of us learn this as we go. All of us need our community and the support of other professionals to do the job. I didn't get that at first, and I had a dreadful case of imposter syndrome. It's not uncommon, and if that's you, you're definitely not alone in feeling like that. But I would just tell you, reach out to other fundraisers, talk to people either at your organization or go to a conference and network. Get a whole bunch of business cards and call people up or email them. And, hey, can we grab a 30-minute coffee or can we spend 20 minutes on a Zoom? Because the people in your network will validate knowledge and advice. And again, I'll just remind you that we are all learning. And sometimes imposter syndrome still kind of affects me, even though I've been doing this a little while. And I have to remind myself these same things. So it's okay. We are all learning, and nobody's going to be perfect, but we get a little better each time we do this work.
What's your message to fundraisers that are new to the field, or even fundraisers that are feeling a bit burnt out right now? What's your message to them to keep going?
I would say, especially if you're feeling burnout, find ways to take care of yourself. We all need self-care. We all need to recharge. Think about what is it that recharges you. For me, it's taking my dogs on a walk, having a nice book and a glass of wine, or you'd be surprised, but for me, I'm quite an introvert. So sometimes, especially after a travel week full of meetings, I need to close my doors and just have a quiet day to myself. So
I get that.
Finding what recharges you is really important. And then if you're new, again, I would just say thinking about who in the community can serve as a mentor, as a trusted advisor. Finding those individuals that will mentor you is crucial. And I have a couple mentors right now. I also have a few people that I mentor. And helping out the people that come behind us, as well as getting help from those who have more experience in this field, is just incredibly important.
Perfect. What's your note to us? What's your final note? If you had 30 seconds and you were able to share a message to our whole audience, leaders, organizational leaders, change makers, mission-driven individuals, what would you say?
I would say make sure to think of fundraising and the work that you're doing as a holistic piece of the organization. So we're thinking, remember, time, talent, treasure, and teamwork. And our specialty is the treasure aspect. How can we work with the others in our organization to support all four of those components? And then just keep doing the good work.
Rachel, I appreciate you so much. I was so excited to even get on this episode today. I had told people about this episode because your wisdom, your heart, and then just your ability to continue to show up in the way that you even just recommended for us. It's truly beautiful and it's truly inspiring as well. And I just wanted to say thank you for doing this work. Thank you for your learning lessons and your wisdom and your insight and your heart for the work that you're doing as well. And I'm sure that our audience is going to take away so many nuggets. But here's one thing that really stuck out to me. It was the infinity circle, and then identifying who is closely connected to us, and then who are the who's that are connected to the people that are close to us, so that we can continue to not just build the time, talent, and treasure aspect, but then also understanding the teamwork and the collaboration aspect that is necessary in this process. Rachel, where can we find you? Where can our listeners find you? And how can we support some of the initiatives that you are leading?
Thank you very much, Kyle. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Rachel Simon. You can also email me at rachel.simon@business.fsu.edu. And I look forward to meeting with you and hopefully seeing you at a conference in the near future, chatting with you by Zoom or over the phone about the work that you're doing, and share some more news from my end too.
Let's do it. Rachel, you are amazing. And again, anybody listening, thank you again for listening to another episode of the Contagious Culture Podcast. One of the questions that we always ask is, what type of culture are you spreading? The energy you bring is the culture you create. Make yours worth catching. We'll see you all.